The rain hammered against the windows of my small apartment in Minneapolis, mirroring the storm raging inside me. Alaric, a 46-year-old IT specialist, had always prided myself on being a rational man, a problem solver. But the problem I was now facing felt insurmountable, a gaping wound in the very fabric of my life. It had started subtly, almost imperceptibly. A chill in the air, a distance in Alara's eyes that I couldn't quite explain. We'd been married for 18 years, a love story that began in a coffee shop and blossomed into a life filled with shared dreams, quiet evenings, and two beautiful children, Linnea and Leif. Or so I thought. Alara, a vibrant and talented architect, had always been the more outgoing one, the life of the party. I, on the other hand, was content with my routines, my coding, and the comforting predictability of our life together. But lately, her vibrancy seemed to be directed elsewhere. She was working late more often, attending conferences in cities I'd never heard of, and her phone was perpetually glued to her hand, the screen angled away from my prying eyes. I tried to brush it off, attributing it to the pressures of her demanding career. But the nagging feeling persisted, a knot tightening in my stomach with each passing day. I started paying closer attention, noticing the little things I'd previously overlooked. The unfamiliar perfume lingering in her car, the secretive smiles she exchanged with her phone, the way she flinched when I touched her. One evening, while Ilara was supposedly at a networking event downtown, I decided to surprise her with dinner. I knew the restaurant she'd mentioned, a trendy Italian place known for its romantic ambience. I even made a reservation under her name, hoping to catch her off guard and rekindle the spark I felt slipping away. As I walked through the restaurant, my heart pounded in my chest. The place was buzzing with energy, couples laughing and clinking glasses. I scanned the tables, my eyes searching for Ilara's familiar face. And then I saw her. She was sitting at a secluded table in the corner, bathed in the soft glow of candlelight. But she wasn't alone. Across from her sat a man I'd never seen before. He was younger, with a chiseled jawline and an arrogant smirk. They were holding hands, their fingers intertwined, and Ilara was gazing at him with a look I hadn't seen in years, a look of pure adoration. My world tilted on its axis. The blood drained from my face and a cold wave of nausea washed over me. I stood frozen, a silent observer of a scene that felt like a twisted nightmare. I wanted to scream, to confront them, to tear them apart, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by the sheer weight of betrayal. I stumbled out of the restaurant, my mind reeling. I barely registered the honking cars and the jostling crowds as I made my way back to my apartment. I felt like I was walking through a dream, or rather, a horrific nightmare. Back in the sterile confines of my apartment, the truth slammed into me with the force of a wrecking ball. Ilara was cheating on me. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, was betraying me in the most intimate way imaginable. The next few days were a blur of pain and confusion. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I could barely function. I replayed the scene in the restaurant over and over in my head, each time feeling the knife twist a little deeper. I considered confronting Ilara, but I couldn't bring myself to face her. I was afraid of what she would say, afraid of the lies she would spin. Instead, I did what I always did when faced with a problem. I researched. I scoured the internet for information on infidelity, on signs of cheating, on how to cope with betrayal. I joined online forums, reading stories from other betrayed spouses, finding a strange sense of solace in their shared pain. I learned about gaslighting, about manipulation, about the insidious ways cheaters justify their actions. And I started to see the patterns in Ilara's behavior, the subtle shifts in her personality that I had previously dismissed as stress or fatigue. One evening, while Ilara was working late, I decided to do some digging. I knew it was a violation of her privacy, but I felt like I had no choice. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I waited until she was asleep, then quietly slipped into her home office. I knew her password, it was our anniversary date, and I quickly accessed her computer. I started with her email but found nothing incriminating. She was too careful to leave a trail there. Then I remembered her phone. She always kept it locked, but I knew her passcode the same as her computer password. I grabbed the phone from her nightstand and held my breath as I entered the code. It unlocked. I started scrolling through her messages, my heart pounding in my chest, and then I found them. A series of texts and photos exchanged with a number I didn't recognize. The messages were explicit, filled with lust and longing. The photos were even more damning, intimate shots of Alara and the man from the restaurant, taken in what appeared to be a hotel room. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The evidence was undeniable. Alara was not just having an affair. She was deeply involved with this man. She was living a double life, and I was the unsuspecting fool she was deceiving. I spent the rest of the night poring over the messages, piecing together the timeline of their affair. It had been going on for months, maybe even longer. They had met at a conference in Chicago and had been seeing each other regularly ever since. They had even planned a romantic getaway to Paris next month. The more I read, the angrier I became. I felt like I had been living a lie for years. Everything I thought I knew about Alara, about our marriage, was a fabrication. She had betrayed my trust, shattered my heart, and destroyed the foundation of our family. As the sun began to rise, I knew I couldn't stay in that apartment any longer. I needed to get away, to clear my head, to figure out what to do next. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and left without a word. I drove aimlessly for hours, ending up in a small town in rural Minnesota. I checked into a motel, turned off my phone, and tried to sleep. But sleep was impossible. My mind was racing, filled with images of Alara and her lover, with questions I couldn't answer. After a few days of self-imposed exile, I knew I couldn't run away from my problems. I had to confront Alara, to demand answers, to decide what to do with my life. I drove back to Minneapolis, my heart filled with a mixture of anger, fear, and resolve. I walked into the apartment, finding Alara waiting for me, her face etched with worry. "Alaric, where have you been?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I've been so worried." I didn't say anything. I simply held up her phone, the screen displaying one of the incriminating photos. Her face paled. She stared at the phone for a moment, then looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. "Alaric, I can explain," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Explain what, Alara?" I said, my voice cold and hard. "Explain how you've been lying to me for months. Explain how you've been betraying my trust. Explain how you've been sleeping with another man." She started to cry, her body shaking with sobs. "It just happened," she said. "It wasn't supposed to happen. I don't know what came over me. It just happened," I repeated, my voice rising. "You planned a romantic getaway to Paris with him. How does that just happen?" She didn't answer. She just stood there crying, her face buried in her hands. "Who is he, Alara?" I asked, my voice softer now. "What does he mean to you?" "He's just someone I met at a conference," she said. "It's not serious. It was just a mistake." "A mistake that you've been repeating for months," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. "Alaric, please," she said. "I'm so sorry. I love you. I don't want to lose you." I stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman I saw before me with the woman I thought I knew. But it was impossible. The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. "I don't believe you, Alara," I said, my voice flat. "I don't think you love me. I think you've been using me. I think you've been lying to me for years." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, Alaric, that's not true," she said. "I do love you. I've always loved you." "Then why did you do it, Alara?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why did you betray me?" She didn't answer. She couldn't answer, because deep down she knew the truth. She had done it because she was selfish, because she was bored, because she wanted something new. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, crying. I knew it was the end. Our marriage was over. Our family was broken. The divorce was messy, as divorces often are. Alara tried to paint me as the bad guy, claiming I was controlling and emotionally abusive. But the truth eventually came out, thanks to some of her friends who felt guilty about keeping her secret. The judge sided with me, awarding me custody of the children and a significant portion of our assets. Alara moved to Chicago to be with her lover, but their relationship didn't last. He was a player, a womanizer, and he quickly moved on to someone else. Alara was left alone, heartbroken and regretting her choices. I, on the other hand, slowly began to rebuild my life. It wasn't easy. The pain of betrayal lingered for a long time, but I had my children, my friends, and my work. And I eventually learned to trust again, to love again. Years later, I met someone new, a kind and compassionate woman named Astrid. We fell in love and we built a life together, a life based on honesty, trust, and mutual respect. Ilara, on the other hand, never remarried. She remained in Chicago, working as an architect, living a solitary life. I heard through the grapevine that she was unhappy, that she regretted her affair, that she missed our family. I didn't feel any satisfaction in her misery. I didn't want her to suffer. I just wanted her to understand the pain she had caused, the damage she had done. In the end, I learned a valuable lesson, that love is not enough. That trust is essential, and that betrayal can destroy even the strongest of relationships. But I also learned that it is possible to heal, to move on, to find happiness again, even after the most devastating heartbreak. I am now happily married to Astrid and my children are thriving. I have a good life, a life filled with love, laughter, and peace. And while the scars of Ilara's betrayal will always be there, they no longer define me. They are simply a reminder of the past, a reminder of the lessons I have learned, and a reminder of the strength I have found within myself. That's my story, a tale of love, betrayal, and ultimately, resilience. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope remains and that healing is always possible. Remember to cherish those who are loyal and true, for they are the greatest treasures in life. Thank you for listening.